Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Project Veterans Voices. I'm your host, AJ Cox, and today we're going to have a very interesting story, something out of the norm, what we don't normally do here, which, I think you're going to get a good kick out of it. I think you're going to learn some stuff, but it should be pretty exciting. Before we get into it, be sure, if you're enjoying these podcasts, go check out our website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do there. You can go to that merchandise tab, go get you some cool gear. You can click on the record your story. If you're out there and you want to record your story for the veterans, to go ahead and just click on that. We can set you up with that. And then a big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project, man. They're out there doing amazing things. If you don't know anything about them, go check them out. Even if you do, check them out again. Just go. It's an amazing organization. If you could support them in any way, it'd be much appreciated. But you can find them at tillvalhallaproject.com. Are you a Marine veteran? Are you missing that bond you had on active duty? Then I have a place for you. Join the only congressionally chartered Marine Corps Veteran Service Organization, the Marine Corps League. Get that brother and sisterhood back in your life. Become one of the fewer, the prouder, a Marine Corps League member. All right, here we are. Man, we got a special guest today. I'm pretty excited about this. Jimmy, I met him at a retreat for veterans and first responders, those types of things. And anyways, he's not a veteran, but first responder. In fact, he works currently with the DEA, which is really awesome. And I'm excited to hear all his information, his story. So it should be a good time, man. Jimmy, how you doing?
I'm good, sir. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. I don't see you, but I hear you.
All right. Yeah, I can kind of manipulate this thing maybe and see if there's a button I need to push.
Yeah,
it says
you probably hit the camera button on accident there.
All right. Let me give me 1 second and put my glasses on and take a peek at this. The smallest screen. I'm working off my phone, so I apologize.
That's all good. That's all good. No big deal. Well, Jimmy, real quick, if for everybody out there, especially the Marines out there, you may notice that name, your last name, Overstreet. And there's a pretty famous individual in the Marine Corps, well-known individual by the last name of Overstreet. And that took me by surprise whenever we first met. But if you want, you can kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my father, James Grady Overstreet Sr., he's got a family member. I guess he would be like a second cousin, who was the 12th Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, Harold Gene Overstreet.
That's right. Yeah.
I know him as Gene, because obviously we're family. But yeah, when my dad passed is actually when I met him. That was back in 2002, and at the time I just graduated college a few years, and he asked me what I was doing with my life, and at the time I was just a college graduate, still trying to find my way, and he offered me an opportunity to go to the Marines. However, I was in the job process with the Border Patrol because that was right after 9/11.
Right.
And he told me that if needed, we could, get you an opportunity. And I ended up going, obviously, to the Border Patrol with the Department of Justice at the time. And we've stayed in touch throughout the years. Matter of fact, I think at the retreat, it was at the retreat that we met.
Yeah.
He was also at an event. He's real big in the Young Marines program.
Yeah.
And he was at an event, and I reached out to him, and he actually messaged back to me. And I believe I shared that with Lee and you guys.
Mm-hmm.
which was kind of cool, to be around a bunch of Marines and then having him, personally send a message to everybody,
Yeah.
thanking us for, because I explained to him, hero and what it stood for,
Mm-hmm.
and that we had some veterans that were with us that were going through some tough times, and that's why we had come together to fellowship to kind of help everybody, you know, bring some positive things in life, and that's the purpose of these events that Lee puts on throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
And he, he said nothing but good things. He praised it, and um, said keep doing what you're doing, and even though you're not a Marine, you are a first responder, and um, you know, he just always had good things to say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
And
shared that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say he's a great guy. I got to meet him. Well, I guess it was this past summer, but I got to meet him, and I said, "Oh, hey, I know somebody that you might know," and he was like, "Oh yeah, I know him."
Yeah. So he's a big three gun guy. I mean, he's still got dead shot, 28-inch waist.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, he is the definition of what an enlisted Marine should and should and needs to be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he
Very
and
true.
he is Marine through and through. That is for sure.
Yeah. 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 Most definitely.
But a
Man.
very humble guy. He will send me, correspondence throughout the year, whether it's text or a phone call,
Hmm.
usually around the holidays. Um, and then a few years ago, I was out in Texas hunting with some friends that happened to live a few cities over from Seguin, which is where he lives.
Okay.
And and one of the ranch owners, who's a neighbor to a friend of mine, is actually a friend of Gene's, and
Oh,
so
okay.
Gene came over and we met up and had coffee and hung out, and it was a nice time.
Yeah. 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 That's really cool. Well, Jimmy, if you don't mind, let's kind of start at the beginning for you. Like, where did you grow up, and kind of tell us a little bit about that experience, and then what eventually led you to joining up with the Border Patrol, which eventually led to the DEA.
So I grew up in Mobile, Alabama, which is a
Hmm.
Gulf Coast city. It's situated in a little bitty sliver of Alabama at the bottom, between Pensacola, Florida, and Biloxi, Mississippi.
Okay.
And grew up there. Went on to college locally at the University of Southern Alabama, or South Alabama is how we refer to it.
Hmm.
And since then, they went from they're now a D1 school, Sunbelt Conference.
Oh,
It's
okay.
grown quite a bit. They've got a football team they've had since 13,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, so it's grown. And went to school thinking I was going to be a finance guy. So I studied business,
Hmm.
finance, and then after graduation, I um, went to work for Wells Fargo Financial, which is the lending side of the banking. As we
Okay.
know, everybody knows Wells Fargo is a bank, but
Hmm.
they have a big lending side. So I applied and went to work for them for about 2 years, and at some point, I kind of lost interest in what I was doing.
Right.
I was raised, my mother and father divorced when I was around 7 years old. So I
Okay.
was pretty much raised by a single mom. I mean, my dad was involved, but it just I lived with her,
Hmm.
and both of them instilled some values in me that if you enjoy what you do as a job, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and so I always told myself that wherever I work, if I'm not happy, then I'm going to find somewhere else to work.
Hmm.
So the Wells Fargo thing, it was great at first, steady paycheck, benefits, insurance,
Mm-hmm.
but the job itself was just not fulfilling.
Right.
And while I was in college, I had the opportunity um, to work part time for a private investigation firm.
Mm-hmm.
So at the financial aid office at the college, they have all these jobs posted up on the wall, and different companies, different businesses that typically use college students that have flexible schedules
Yeah.
um, to recruit. And these two brothers, they were retired police officers from Pennsylvania, had
Okay.
moved to Mobile. It was Norman and Norman Associates was the name of the private investigation firm. Kind of like a movie, right? Like
Yeah.
like AJ Simon and Simon.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I'm dating myself by saying that, but it
It's
was
all
it
good.
was yes, sir. So it was a lot like that. Still trying to figure out this video thing, man. I'm looking at it and I can see you and I can see the American flag, but I'm still
Well,
trying to figure out how to get the video to come back up.
there should be a now on the phone. It might be a little different, but
Yes, sir.
there should be like a little button. Oh, there it is. You got it.
So I turned the
Yeah.
phone sideways and now it seems to work.
There you
So
go.
maybe that was the solution. I just had to widen the view, maybe.
I'm gonna go along with it because whatever you did worked. So
All right, well, we'll stay with this. So back to it. So Norman and Norman was looking for a couple of part-time people just to paid like $10 an hour. In
mhm.
2001, that was a good wage um, for part-time work.
Yeah.
So they just needed people to. Here's an address. Go park in front of it or park near it, and try not to be noticed, and just take notes of what you see. Write down vehicles, write down tag numbers, write down whatever,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
so that's what I did. Well, as time went on, um, like I said, I had left Wells Fargo. I wasn't happy.
Uh-huh.
So what I did was I decided to go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
So I enrolled back at South into a post grad program and for marketing, and then I did this stuff part time, and
Okay.
so that's kind of how I fell into that. I apologize. I didn't, I guess, cover that transition from
No,
Wells
it's all right.
Fargo to how I got going from Wells Fargo to this private investigation firm. But
Mm-hmm.
nevertheless, I went there. They hired me, so I'm out doing these little assignments for them. Well, as time went on, after a few months, um, I had an opportunity to work a missing persons case. So there was
Okay.
a pretty wealthy family out of North Carolina. I won't mention any names, but the family's son was 17 years of age, and he
Mm-hmm.
ran away from home. And of course, they, like any family, would be concerned and try to locate him. And back then, you didn't have social media.
Right.
We didn't have the resources to be able to track credit card usage that fast.
Mm-hmm.
If today, if you gave your son or daughter a credit card and they ran away and they went to a gas station and used it, within an hour you would see that and you would know,
Right.
okay, where they went there and made a purchase, and then you go and review cameras and maybe go talk to the store clerk or whatever and see if they remembered what they were driving or tag number or whatever. Well, we didn't have
Mm-hmm.
those resources back then. So there were several other individuals that were also working for this private investigation firm,
Mm-hmm.
and a few were full time. To include this one gentleman who had worked for the FBI for like 8 years, and so we'll just call him a former FBI agent.
Okay.
And for some reason, he left the FBI and he went to work with Norman and Norman. It was, like I said, two brothers, and he was kind of like a junior partner.
Okay.
And obviously, his FBI credentials, they wanted that as part. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? It kind of helped them
Yeah.
sell their services, and the guy possessed some skills. You know,
Mhm.
that allowed us to be able to enhance our ability to do the investigations needed.
Right.
Because we weren't doing criminal work, you know, it's all civil type stuff.
Hmm.
But anyway, on this one particular case, this family's looking for their son, and he had a credit card that they had issued him. And like a week after he had left, the credit card company notified them that he had used it to make some purchases in Tunica, Mississippi.
Mm.
So the family met with the owners of the investigation firm and said, you know, here's a retainer amount of money. Can you send guys to Tunica and do whatever it is you do to help find my son?
Right.
So we went to Tunica with an amount of an allowance and got the cheapest hotel. And you know, we're eating $5 pizzas or whatever. You know, trying to limit expenses. You know, for the family.
Right.
And we just did. I mean, we didn't even know where to start. We went obviously to the place where he made the purchase, and then talked to the clerk and showed a picture. You know, we had the child's photo and everything. And I say child, I mean he was 17 years of age,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
but still a minor. You know,
Hmm.
and so we show the picture to the clerk, and believe it or not, the clerk had remembered seeing this young man.
Oh wow.
And he was actually quite mature. You know, he had a kind of a 5 o'clock shadow. At
Hmm.
17, was already, you know, kind of getting a beard, and um, he was a tall, you know, probably 6'2", 200 pound, good looking, you know, kid. So
Hmm.
I guess he had flirted with the clerk, and that's how she remembered.
Ah. Okay.
So she said that she had seen him a couple times, so she figured he's in the area, and he was buying cigarettes. So we knew he was a smoker. So
Hmm.
that kind of helped us. Um, so we decided to put up flyers at all the gas stations, and then we talked to the family about a reward if anybody could. Uh, so we bought a burner phone. You know, everybody knows the whole term of a burner phone, which is, I guess, kind of started in the drug world, where you could buy a phone without having to give your KYC, right? Know your
Hmm.
customer information. So you could buy the phone, set it up, get a phone number, and you didn't have to give any information, you know, your name, whatever. So we bought one of these phones, put the phone number on a flyer. We went to a Kinko's, put the kid's picture up, put the phone number, and put any information to find this person. There's a reward available, but we didn't put an amount.
Okay.
And believe it or not, phones started ringing after about 2 days.
No kidding. Wow.
And it was roughly about 8 days later, we got wind that he was working for a construction company at one of the casinos there. Because in Tunica, there's kind of like Biloxi, Mississippi.
Hmm.
There's quite a bit of casinos there, and there was one being renovated, and he had got a job on a construction crew.
Got it.
And believe it
Yeah.
or not, he got a job using a fake ID because you had to be 18, and but somebody had recognized his face,
Yeah.
and so we were able to find the child, and then we didn't go and like go get him or you know, we're working with the locals. It was kind of a interesting story. I don't know if you have any Masons that watch this podcast,
Mm.
but I would tell you that the Masonic fraternity is a very deep brotherhood, is what I can
Hmm.
tell you.
Yeah.
Because the sheriff of that area at the time was a Mason, and we met with him. And one of the investigators that I was working with was a Mason,
Mm.
and through that relationship, he said, whatever resources you need. And like I said, we located where the kid was. And then from there, we were able to use some resources to find out the hotel he was staying in. And then we notified the parents. And then the parents flew in town. And then, and I'm not real sure the whole reason he left. But anyway, they were able to reconnect with their son. And from that was pretty cool. And I was like, this is kind of neat. Well, I tell you that story to tell you that the former FBI guy told me, he said, I know you're going to school to get your master's, but you've got a degree already. And federal law enforcement, have you ever thought about being a criminal investigator? And I was like, no, it never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
I had always anticipated being a businessman. I wanted to make money. And so I went to school and studied business. And then I went out and worked in that world for a little while and realized it wasn't for me. And then I was introduced to this and was like, wow, this is fun. I could do this for a living.
Yeah.
But he said, you can go to work for the government and do stuff very similar, guaranteed paycheck, guaranteed benefits, guaranteed retirement, no guarantee where you're going to be once you get hired. But if location's not a deterrent, then the federal government's got many, many, many agencies. So I started looking, and it just so happened that, 9/11 had just happened, and Border Patrol was all over the news, hiring like wildfire. So I applied, and within a few months, I was hired, and then I got an academy date for February, and then it ended up getting pushed to March of 2003, and that's how it all began.
Wow. So what was that? What was like? Because you had to go to the academy. So what was the academy like for you?
Wow. So I'll tell you. So funny story. So when you apply for the Border Patrol at that time, when you're given a job offer, they tell you, here's 4 states, and it's obviously the 4 states that border Mexico. Because at that time, the states that bordered Canada were only for senior people, right? It wasn't fresh nuggets right out of the academy. And I use the term nuggets because that's what you were called as a Border Patrol trainee back in those days. They called you a nugget. And so only nuggets got sent to the border. So I had to rank California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas in an order, 1 through 4. And so I put California number 1, Texas number 2, Arizona number 3, New Mexico number 4, and I ended up getting California. So before I went to the academy, I knew I was going to a station somewhere in California along the border.
Okay.
Well, once you they call you and they give you an official job offer, they then tell you the station that you're going to be assigned to. Hence, you graduate the academy. So I was assigned to Campo, California, which happens to be the very station that Tom Homan, our border czar, that I'm sure you're aware of that name.
Yeah.
That's where he started his career in law enforcement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was there at 84 to 88 as a Border Patrol agent, and then he went to what we know now to be Legacy Customs as an investigator, criminal investigator. And I was at the same station, but of course many years later. 2003 is when I entered on duty there. But so because of being assigned to Campo, that fell under the San Diego sector. So the way the Border Patrol is divided up throughout the United States, and again, it's changed a lot since then. I mean, that was 23 years ago. There were maybe 20 sectors throughout the United States. And each sector has, we'll say, anywhere from 5 to 12 stations assigned to the sector. And they all report to the sector. So San Diego sector had San Clemente checkpoint,
Mm-hmm.
Temecula, Imperial Beach, El Cajon, Chula Vista, Boulevard Station, Campo Station. So there was a bunch of stations that reported to it,
Mm-hmm.
and so my very first thing that I had to do was book a plane ticket, fly to San Diego, and then I went to the sector along with all the other San Diego people that were going to be in my academy class,
Mm-hmm.
and then we raised our right hand and swore the oath, and we were hired, and then they stuck us on an immigration bus, believe it or not, and drove us to the airport. And then from there, we flew to Charleston, South Carolina, which was where the academy took place.
That's
And
a very interesting way of doing it. Like they bring you to the where you're going to be working for the hiring process, I guess, and then ship you off.
correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
So
interesting.
they swear you in. Now it may have changed since then, but that's how it was back then.
Yeah.
And so I showed up at the airport, San Diego. Of course, we're 3 hours. It's Pacific Standard Time out there.
Uh-huh.
So we gained 3 hours, but we took a red eye flight. So we show up in the middle of the night, and they use another immigration vans this time in South Carolina and Charleston, and then bring us to the academy.
Okay.
And so my actually ended up being my roommate was a corpsman from the Navy,
Oh, okay.
where he had left the Navy, applied with Border Patrol, and he actually sat beside me when we took our oath of office in San Diego. And so we show up, and these guys in green uniforms and smokies, the round hat,
Yeah.
uh, they're standing at attention, and we get off the bus, and it's like fall in formation. Of course, I have no idea what that means. Um, I just assume get in line, right, from watching movies,
Yeah.
and I'm standing behind him. So my last name starts with an O. His last name um, was also an O, but it was my OV. Is his.
Mhm.
His was further in the alphabet, closer in the alphabet, so he's in front of me
Right.
in alphabetical order. And they're like, stand at attention. And I'm like, how do I do that? And he's like, kind of whispering over his shoulder. He's like, stick your thumbs in your index fingers and put them against your legs. And he's like, this is going to be fun. And I was like, what have I got myself into? And
I love it.
so so from that day, of course, we're in civilian clothes. From that day, every day, the first thing we did the next morning, they processed us in. We went over, got our PT gear, and then we went through what they called Hell Week, where
Oh, okay.
they thrash you for a week, and in between that, we were getting measured for uniforms, and
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
you wore a full green uniform, and there was about 8 classes at this academy. So every Monday morning we would meet in formation. Every class would be out on the deck. And I guess it was a lot like the military. Again, I was never in the military.
Mm-hmm.
I just go by what I've seen in the movies. And friends of mine that graduated high school and went off to the military said, yeah, that sounded a lot like boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
But the only difference was at 5 o'clock they were done with us. Where I understand in boot camp, you show up for whatever, was it 6, 8 weeks, and they, do what they want to with you day or night. But with us, our day started at 8 and then at 5, and at 5 you were free to do your whatever. I mean, study. Of course, we had to learn Spanish at the academy. That was one of the required things. So this gringo from Mobile, Alabama, spent a lot of time studying Spanish.
Right.
And like that first week, that Hell Week, I'll
Uh-huh.
never forget it. The hallways and the Charleston Academy was at an old base in Charleston,
Okay.
and it's where the USS Hunley is located. So I assume it's a naval, naval installation
Mm-hmm.
that they used. But they had barracks and chow hall and everything. Um, but the hallway smelled like Ben Gay that whole week. Uh, and look, man, we had guys that played college football. We had guys that were in the military, studs, and still,
Uh-huh.
man, it was no joke. It was quite an eye opener, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. They were
Yeah,
wearing you out.
that's it. So after about it's just shy of 6 months that
Mm-hmm.
you're there, and once I graduated, I had 2 weeks to go back home, get my affairs in order, and then report to California. And so then when you get to California, um, the Border Patrol, and I'm not sure again if they still do this, but they have what they call the seven, and the 10, or maybe a 7 in a year. So I kind of explain what that means. So when you graduate the academy,
Mm-hmm.
um, you have a proficiency of Spanish that's required, and they claim that the amount of Spanish that we learned at the academy would be the equivalent of getting a minor in Spanish in a 4-year degree.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it's drinking water through a fire hose is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, and luckily for me, I had taken Spanish in high school, so I knew how to count. I knew the colors. I knew how
Mm-hmm.
to conjugate verbs. Um, and then I took it for my language in college. So I had
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of a base. Um, and the way they break the classes down is you have Spanish 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the native
Okay.
speakers that speak well and know all the rules of the language are in group 1. And those that
Okay.
are not quite, as I say, educated in the language but still know how to speak it are in group
Mm-hmm.
2. And then group
Makes sense.
3 was a lot of white guys or gringos, non-native speakers. I
Yeah.
say white, but non-Hispanic native speakers who have a little bit of a base of Spanish was in group
Okay.
3, and that was the group I was in. And then 4 and 5 were those that like were learning it brand new,
Right.
right off the jump. So once you graduate at the 6 month mark, you go to your prospective sector that you're assigned to. So in my class, we started with 60 people in our class. And at that time, the Border Patrol had an attrition rate of about 50%. And it was
Wow.
about right on the money because I think we graduated 32 of the 60.
Holy cow.
And they wash for different reasons. We have evasive and defensive driving. I think we lost a couple people from like New York and big cities where they walked everywhere they went and they didn't even have a driver's license. Matter of fact,
Yeah.
one of them had to get a driver's license to come to the academy because they had used an
Really?
ID. Yeah, they used an ID card all these years to cash checks and open bank accounts or whatever. But they used a subway. They used buses. They didn't
Yeah.
have a car,
Yeah.
so they didn't know how to drive. And
Yeah.
so we lost a couple of those to driving. We lost a good bit to PT. Um, shin splints. I mean, you run a lot,
Yeah.
lot. And we lost a few to shin splints, and then the rest to Spanish. They just couldn't cut the mustard
Wow.
with the proficiency for Spanish. So what happens is once you graduate, like I said, in my class, I had about 30, 32, and we were all slotted to go to San Diego sector.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, I'm lying. I'm sorry. I misspoke. Half of us were slotted to go to San Diego sector. The other half was slotted to go to El Centro sector, which is
Oh,
right
okay.
next door to San Diego. But we were both going to all of us were going to California. Everyone
Right.
in our class back then, typically everybody in the class was going to the same state.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
One class everybody be going to Arizona. Next class everybody be going to New Mexico.
Wow.
If it's the same way now, I don't know. I don't know if they're kind of mixed and intermingled or whatever, but half of my class went to El Centro sector, which is, east of San Diego. It goes from the mountain range down to the desert,
Yeah.
and that's where El Centro sector is. And then the other half of us went to San Diego sector, and we were sprinkled among Imperial Beach Station, Brownfield Station,
Hmm.
Campo Station, and in my class alone, I think there was like 8 of us that went to Campo.
Okay.
Well, all of us every Friday, didn't matter what station you were assigned to in the San Diego sector,
Hmm.
all of us had to go to San Diego sector every Friday for what they called post academy.
Wow.
And so it was like a continued academy even after you graduated.
Right.
So I guess it would be kind of equivalent to maybe in the military. Don't you guys have what they call AIS, where you kind of like your specialty or whatever? Like
Yeah.
once you graduate from boot camp, basic, I
Mhm.
guess, you
Yeah. Then you
then
go to your
the
specialty.
learning
Yeah.
right, but the learning doesn't stop. Is my point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so we went to we would go to San Diego sector every Friday, and the majority of what we worked on was Spanish. And the
Wow.
reason being is because 99% of the people we came in contact with were Spanish speakers. Because we're there to catch uh, illegal immigrants crossing into the
Right.
country, and you got to be able to talk to them. You got to be
Hmm.
able to interview them. And so it's just a full saturation of Spanish, and that's where the 7 and what we call the 10 or 11 month comes in. So at 7 months of the time you were hired,
Hmm.
which would equate to 1 month after you graduated the academy, right?
Right.
So 4 weeks. So after 4 Fridays of going to post academy, we then took what they called your test, and you would sit down in front of a senior border patrol agent, and you would do an interview. And the interview is in the border patrol. We had these, like just like the government, every form has a number, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like a DD 214, right? Or
Yeah.
or whatever. I don't know any of the other military forms, but the,
That's the important
the,
one.
right, I got you. Yep. So in the border patrol, we had this form called a 213, and it's
Okay.
basically a demographics form
Mm.
where you ask the person their name, their date of birth, their where they're from, where they were going, that kind of nature of stuff. Biographical data, right?
Right.
Demographics, biographical data. Your mother, father. Do you have any kids? Are you married?
Hmm.
Phone number, address, all that stuff. Well, this interview took place, and my job was to ask the question in Spanish, and then they would give a response, and I had to translate it in English on a piece of paper.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was word for word. I mean, you had to conjugate the verbs correctly. You had to put, the noun and the pronoun and the verb in the
Hmm.
right spot. And if they asked you a question, it better have a question mark at the end of it. Or if they made a statement, it better have a period, right?
Wow.
And you were graded on every one of those little things. And if you didn't score 70 or above, you didn't have a job because you're still on probation.
Wow.
So now they get a second whack at you, right? So the first whack was the academy. And if you don't cut mustard, you lose a job.
Yeah.
The second time is at the 7 month mark.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, then you continue to go every Friday to Post Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, we're all on what they call the FTA program, right? So we had a field training agent,
Mm-hmm.
but we actually had two assigned to all nine of us. So every day when we would go into work on whatever shift, because on the border it never sleeps. There's
Right.
three rotating shifts on the border. It's back in those days you had day shift, which ran from 7 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
and then the mid or swing shift where you went from 3 to 11, and
Mm-hmm.
then the mid shift went from 11 to 7.
Right.
Well, our FTA, or our FTU, we'll call it, our field training unit, which was my 9 classmates and the
Mm-hmm.
two field training agents, we were assigned to the swing shift.
Mm-hmm.
So we would go out and work traffic. So we're out learning the job through a field training agent, and then on Fridays, we would all drive to sector and then continue our Spanish
Right.
and other things. I mean, they would go over some statutory law and criminal law, and
Mm-hmm.
we would discuss, last week did anybody sees any dope, or did last week did we have any smuggling cases where you had like a vehicle stop and there was a driver and they had 5 or 6 people in the car they were trying to load up and take further north into the United States or whatnot.
Right.
And so we would talk about stuff like that too, but again, it was also heavy Spanish. Well, in a 4 month period, now you've been on the job almost a year, and then you have your final test. And let me tell you something, man. I've had some stressful events in my life, but that 11-month test was the stressful at that time.
Wow.
Because if you didn't score 70 or better, you were done. And I would, and I don't, looking back on it, I think that they use that as a tool,
Mm-hmm.
because if you weren't cutting the mustard, man, they had to have ways to wash out those that really didn't need to be there. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Um, so maybe that was part of it. I don't personally know. I know it's probably not in black and white in some manual somewhere, but I do know that there were some that graduated the academy and maybe got through the 7 month, but then in that 4 month window where, because once you get your year, you're good. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, you're kind of vetted at that point, and you're off probation. And then they start as they assign you a ride, and you start riding on your own, and you kind of have not by any stretch of the imagination are you senior, but
Right.
you've kind of learned your way a little bit. And we lost a handful, um, from the whole class, not my 9, but
Mm-hmm.
from the 32, I think we lost a few, in the what they called the 11-month test. And but it was a stressful time because they get 3 swings at you. Um, and if you had personality issues, or if there was some safety issues, with weapons or
Mm-hmm.
driving vehicles, or just doing stupid stuff. I mean, they had a process, obviously, for remedials and um, counseling and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't like you mess up one time, you're gone. But I mean, if it was a habitual issue, usually they would try to cull those out. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean,
And I would think the military is probably very similar. I mean,
oh yeah.
my
Absolutely.
understanding is, and I've worked now for 2 federal agencies, and I've been doing this, almost 24 years. Border Patrol, I think, is probably the closest federal agency to the military as
Hmm.
far as their training of at the basic level. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, if you're going into like a special operations group or SWAT team or some
Mm-hmm.
kind of tactical whatever, I'm sure there's a lot of military training tactics that are used,
Right.
but from an academy standpoint, we were considered paramilitary. I mean, we had guidons, we had uniform inspection every Monday morning. We had to polish
Hmm.
brass, polish our boot. Dude, I had a pair of boots you could shave in. You could use it to shave. I mean, dude, I learned so much. I mean, I'm so my Navy corpsman roommate. I'm not gonna mention his name, but that guy, he's like my brother, man, and he taught me a lot. He taught me how to polish brass. Me and Brasso got to get
Yeah.
along pretty good. And then
Yeah.
with the boots, you take your shoe polish with a cotton ball and you put it on real thick, and then you wet the cotton ball a little bit, and you just sit there. And we'd study Spanish and work boots, and then you light it on fire with a lighter.
That's
I'm sure
right.
I'm bringing. Hi, am I bringing it back?
Oh yeah, you are.
Oh
we
yeah,
we called that our shoe shining parties, right? We would do that. Yeah.
yes, yes. And and you didn't show up. You didn't show up with a uniform that like you ironed it with a hot rock. Because it was a bad day for those people.
Yeah.
But yeah, we would come in formation every Monday, and oh wow, it was yeah. But all that stuff stopped once we got to the field.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. Uh, but yeah, so I was fortunate enough that the Border Patrol has a lot of specialized units that you can if you didn't want to just do the everyday job of showing up, going to muster, going to your zone. So the border is divided up in zones all along the
Mhm.
border. And Campo Station, and I won't get into specifics. I don't know if it'd be OPSEC type thing, but it was responsible for 3 zones. And
Okay.
so when you showed up at muster, you would be assigned to a zone. And so there might be 20 of us there, and they might send, you know, 7 to this zone, 7 to that zone, and 7 to the other zone, or maybe 5 to each zone, and then 2 to the processing block. Because
Okay.
somebody had to, as we're out there catching them, then you got to ferry them in, get them to the station, and then some people have to be there to
Mhm.
process them.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
Now, some stations, or even at our station, depending on what shift you were on, you clean what you caught. So if you caught it, you brought it in, you cleaned it. Um,
I
but
like
at some
that.
stations, they
I
would
like
have
how
it
you
where
say that though.
you catch it, you bring it in, you drop it off, and somebody else would clean it for you.
Yeah.
And again, I'm just using old. Well, I'm being as transparent as I can be. I'm sure there's more of a gentler, kindler way to say it, but that was
Oh,
just
there you
how it
go.
was back then.
Hmm.
And so we would catch, and we had um, some resources that would help us know where the traffic was crossing.
Hmm.
They use all kinds of observation equipment. We actually had the National Guardsmen helping us doing LPOP, and
Oh, no kidding.
and they would put out, I got a group staging up over here, and they're down there looking at us, looking for vehicles, and when the vehicle's not in the area, then they, you know, it's like what do you call it, bum rush, and they try to cross, and then you start sign cutting. I mean, I will say this, AJ, um, the Border Patrol, if I had to guess, when it comes to tracking individuals,
Hmm.
um, there's probably not another entity on the planet that can track. Now, good, I've never, worked with any foreign military or search and rescue
Yeah.
entities around the world, but these dudes could cut sign across pavement. The guys that were good at it.
Yeah.
We had all kind of little tricks. Like one of the tricks we would do is you take a 4D cell mag light, right?
Uh-huh.
And that light, you would put 1 dead battery and 3 good batteries. So it would illuminate, but it was very dim.
Uh-huh.
But if you widened up the angle, because on a mag light, as you spin it would
Right.
sharpen or widen the angle of the lens.
Uh-huh.
And if you would hold that off the ground at an angle, it would light up a trail. So if they
Really?
disturbed, oh yeah, 100%.
Huh.
I'll
That's
tell you a
interesting.
crazy. I'll tell you a crazy story. So later in my border patrol career, it wasn't a long career, but like I said, I was getting explaining to you about the different units that you
Hmm.
can go to. They got a horse patrol unit. Obviously, you saw where they were accused of, in Eagle Pass, and had all the Haitians crossing and all the
Hmm.
accusatory stuff of, trying to bring it back to the slavery days and blah, 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 whatever. But,
Right.
they got scoot units. So they got dudes every day show up and just ride four wheelers all day. Like,
That's not bad.
oh yeah. Then they got a Bore Star unit, which is a search and rescue unit. And all those guys if you make that unit, you obviously have an indoctrination that you have to go through.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how long it is, but I know it involves some swimming, because we worked, you work around waterways, and obviously the
Oh
Rio
yeah.
Grande, doesn't border California, but we had the TJ River, and, there were some water areas that bordered. And so you had to be proficient in the water. And then I'm sure there was a physical component to it and some land nav stuff and things. And again, I never tried out for Bore Star, but they have an indoctrination you go through to include becoming an EMT. So all the Bore Star guys at that time had taken the National Registry and were full-blown EMTs
Wow.
because their job was if a station in San Diego sector called and said, "Hey, we've got a group in distress somewhere," they were
Hmm.
deployed out there, and you show up on a group that's been out in the arduous terrain for 48 hours, you know,
Yeah.
and they're dehydrated. Maybe they got bit by a rattlesnake or took a bad fall from the mountains or something,
Hmm.
and they've got to give medical treatment, and then they've got to get the people out. If they're down in a canyon, they're using
Yeah.
helicopters and Stokes litters, and um, so
Wow.
that those guys were fully versed in all that stuff, search and rescue.
Hmm.
And they also had a unit called the Air Mobile Unit, the AMU, and I actually
Hmm.
went out for that unit, and that was an interesting thing. It was quite a gut check. Um, so once you get a year on, and you finish that test at the 11th
Hmm.
month mark, um, you become you're off probation. You're now
Right.
eligible to start putting in for these units.
Okay.
And so about the 18-month mark, they also have back then they called it REACT, but they have a, special response team. They're like,
Hmm.
you know, um, small weapons and tactics kind of group. They use flashbangs and gas and all that. And,
Right.
they can do 400 push-ups and all that good stuff. Um, but the air mobile unit, there was a physical component to it, but you were a land nav guru, man. The guy that
Uh-huh.
ran it, Chuck Albrecht, was a full-bird colonel in the Army,
Hmm.
but also what they call a FOS, Field Operations Supervisor in the Border
Hmm.
Patrol. And he had formed this unit, and he was the one that created it. He was the grandfather of that thing, and
Hmm.
he created it right there in the San Diego sector. And at that time, it was the only sector that had such a unit. And there was at that time 4 teams, and each team, I want to say, was about 10 guys. Um, and as those guys would, um, transfer or promote,
Hmm.
they had to fill the spots.
Right.
So they would have tryouts, and the tryout was called TASP. It's an acronym for their tryout, but it was an indoctrination. And the way it worked was You put in, if your management approved you to go, you showed up, and it was like, I want to say it was about 10 days long. And the first day you show up in a classroom, I think there was maybe 40 of us, and they teach you how to read a topo map, how to
Mm-hmm.
use a compass, magnetic, lens static compass, and little ranger bead set, get a pace count, and teach you about intersection and resection and azimuths and all the
Right.
stuff that goes with plotting your points and then understanding terrain association and then we went out and we would do kind of like a light, and again I'm not trying to compare it to any type of delta selection kind of thing, but it was a very light version of that
Mm-hmm.
where you were given points, you were given a map, and then you would find your points and you were given a time limit, and at the end of each day there were people cut, and they every day they would cut it down half.
Oh,
And I
wow.
think they don't tell you how many spots that they're trying to fill, but at the end they were trying to fill 8 spots, and I finished number 5.
Okay.
Um, and so I was able to get one of those spots and then earn a spot on one of the teams.
Nice.
But our job, so the air mobile unit kind of served as a augmented disrupt unit. So, and we used helicopter platforms. So the
Mm-hmm.
Border Patrol at that time um, had just transitioned, because you got to remember, Bush came in 2000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Clinton finished up and Bush took over. Well, in 2004, well, we'll call it 3, following 9/11,
Mm-hmm.
he created the Department of Homeland Security.
Right.
And when he did that, he took, I think, 22 agencies from other areas of the government. He took the Coast Guard from
Mm-hmm.
the Department of Transportation. I know he took the Secret Service from the Treasury Department. He took Customs from the Treasury Department. He took Department of Energy, and then the United States Border Patrol. At that time, we were under INS, Immigration and Naturalization Service.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll tell you an interesting uh, story. Of course, we'll get into it later about how I transitioned to DEA. But when I first got hired on, I was given a set of creds that said Department of Justice,
Mm-hmm.
INS, Immigration and Naturalization Service, which was part of the Department of Justice,
Right.
formerly called the Border Patrol, United States Border Patrol. Well, then in '03, end of '03, he creates the Department of Homeland Security. Border Patrol moves up under that. So then, of course, we get new badges, new creds. So now I
Mm-hmm.
got a new set of creds, Department of Homeland Security, you know. And then when I went to DEA, I went back to DOJ. So I got another set of creds, Department of Justice. So
Nice.
anyway, kind of an interesting thing. But I so going back to the air mobile unit, I earned a spot, and we used Hueys.
Mm-hmm.
We got to use the Department of Homeland Security's Air and Marine, which are all Blackhawks,
Oh,
which is the
wow.
Cadillac. That dual engine,
Mm-hmm.
you could carry a chalk much bigger than a Huey, because out there the air's so dry
Mm-hmm.
that we couldn't get enough lift. So we might be able to take all 10 guys. So
Mm-hmm.
when the crew chief in the mornings we would muster, and he'd say, "Look, today, guys, we can take 5. So the other 5 of you are going to have to CAS V out, and we might be going 50 miles away." And so half the
Oh,
team would
wow.
drive, and the other half would ride on the bird.
Yeah.
And we would go to areas that were being requested by sector. So, for instance, let me give you just like an example.
Okay.
So, Imperial Beach, well, no, we'll call it Brownfield. So, Brownfield was one of the stations that fell in the San Diego sector.
Mm-hmm.
And say they were just getting hammered between swing shift and midnight shift. That transition between the shifts, they were just getting overrun.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way the smuggling organizations worked was, the border's kind of like this dike, and you're constantly sticking your finger in the dike. And when you stick your finger in this hole, then a leak pops up over here, and you know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yeah.
it's just constant, right? So they would request us to come out, and then we would work these abbreviated shifts. And so we pretty much make up our own shifts to cover that overlap, so that when the um, swing shift, say around 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
guys are slowly starting to wind down, and they're going and gassing up the rides because we're hot bunking these cars.
Yeah.
We used Jeeps, little Rubicon Jeeps, which was super
Mm-hmm.
cool. Most everything was four-wheel drive, obviously, because of arduous
Oh yeah, you
terrain.
need it. Yeah.
Yeah, we used Dodge, pickup trucks that had dog boxes. Well, I say dog boxes, where they had, boxes in the back where you could put, the people
Mm-hmm.
that we apprehended. And then the Jeeps had, you could put like two in the back of a Jeep. It was very small.
Yeah.
And then we had some Tahoes. Um, and then they had Echo units, which were sedans, but those stayed on pavement. You never went off pavement with those.
Right.
Um, and these vehicles, were constantly being used. I mean, you didn't have your assigned vehicle like you got it and it was yours. You
Right.
know, they didn't have that much money. I
Yeah.
wish,
So,
but
so you're saying it was shift to shift, basically, is you
correct.
sharing it with each shift. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't get a take-home ride.
Mm-hmm.
Your vehicle at the beginning of shift, you showed up and you go hook up with the VSO, the vehicle safety officer, and you do a walk around, make sure the guy before it, didn't back into something or,
Mm-hmm.
tear up something or the radiator's leaking or whatever, because then it's like, no, you did it. No, you did it. No, no, dude. So at the beginning of every shift and at the end of every shift, there was accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was an issue with it, you wrote it up. And if it
Right.
needed to be sent and we had a full-time mechanic shop, and I mean, constantly tires, the cactus out there
Oh
are
yeah.
unforgiving. And the manzanita, which is a vegetation out there that's a very stiff
Mm.
wood tree, that I mean, tires and, I mean, you can just imagine the maintenance nightmare um, of vehicles. And I'm sure the military is the same way, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So, but eventually over time, that vehicle, you knew the three people that used it. I used it on swings, somebody else would use it on mids, and somebody used it on days.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to know them, and you try to take care of each other. Don't leave lunch, don't leave food behind.
Yeah.
Try to clean it up. And we had a little car wash thing. You could wash it off and rinse it off because it is dusty and dirty, and
Mm-hmm.
make sure the windshield wiper blades worked, and whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm sorry I keep deviating, man, because
No,
it's
you're
just
good. You're good. No problem.
there's so much. But yeah, so we would again work these abbreviated shifts, and our CAS V guys would come out, and some of us would ride, and we'd take turns getting airtime in the chopper, and we had some little small MD 500s and 400s, little McDonnell Douglas with the shrouded tail rotor. I don't know if you're familiar with that platform, but
You're
and I was usually just one or two would ride on it, and we'd go map the earth. And usually, if we were working a group, we would use those little birds. And we didn't fly them. We had Flint. We had pilots that
yeah.
we got to know really good. Um, and then we would go disrupt these areas that
Mm-hmm.
were getting bum rushed. And then once things settled down, or if the smuggling organizations on the south side were losing too many bodies, because if those bodies don't cross, they don't get paid.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
then, I mean, there were times that we deal with bandit activity where these groups of bandits would find out about these smuggling groups staging up, these people, whether they be Brazilians or Chinese or Mexicans or
Hmm.
Guatemalans or Hondurans or whatever, and then they go rob them. Because you got to remember, these people are
Hmm.
bringing everything they own
Yeah.
to come to the U.S. And I mean, I've seen a bunch, man. There was one point where we were catching these Brazilians, and it was like girls in like high heel shoes pulling like a luggage with wheels on it, oh yeah, I mean, we're talking about coming through, and this is arduous terrain, dude. It's
Yeah.
like in the woods, It's just bizarre. But
Wow.
yeah, so we did that, and of course, with that we would also catch, backpackers,
Hmm.
and then people smuggling dope, lots of dope. Oh my gosh, so much
Yeah.
dope. And it was mainly coke and marijuana, and then methamphetamine started. Because methamphetamine back then mainly was made domestically here,
Hmm.
and I don't know if you keep up with the whole drug trends, but there was a time when you could go buy as many Sudafed pills as you wanted at
Yeah.
CVS or Walmart, and then
That's right.
that's a precursor for meth. Well, one of the methods to make meth, and back then a very popular method. But then all the states started requiring you to present your ID to buy one box, so
Right.
they could keep tabs on who was buying it. And when that happened, the Mexicans cartels were like, oh, I mean, they have a huge meth consumption market in the
Hmm.
U.S., but the meth cookers can't fulfill it because they can't get what they need to make the product.
Right.
Hence, the whole TV series Breaking Bad. I mean,
Hmm.
a lot of these movies that we watch, there's a lot of reality to a lot of this. They
Yeah.
obviously Hollywood it up, but there's reality to it. So then the Mexicans said, well, we need to tap into that market, and they can get pseudoephedrine or ephedrine by the 55-gallon drum. The pharmaceutical laws are way different than ours.
Yeah.
So then the super labs started popping up, and then we started seeing finished product meth being smuggled across the border. And so yeah, I mean we catch dope. Well, then what happened is our unit actually the DEA in San Diego, is a big office there in San Diego,
Hmm.
asked for our assistance. They reached out to Border Patrol and said, look, we've got intel that these smuggling organizations are whether it be a snitch or whatever. I mean, I don't know where the intel came from, but they would tell us, hey, in this stretch of border, we're expecting a big load to cross in this time frame.
Hmm.
So our management at the sector reached out to Chuck Albrecht, our boss, and said, hey, I want to use your unit, and I want you guys to go out there and flood the area and see if we can intercept some of this dope based on this intel. And so we started doing that, and man, we had great success. And
Hmm.
because of it, when we would catch it, obviously the DEA agents who passed on the intel, would show up so they get more intel, right? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we would hand over the drugs to them for their investigation and their prosecution. But then if we caught bodies, they would want to interview them and further get more intel for their investigation. Well, I started seeing that side of it, and I started seeing flashbacks of whenever I was doing the private investigation stuff, where
Mm.
you start interviewing people and you start coming up with creative ways to get whatever your end product is.
Hmm.
And It just so happens one of the DEA agents, he was a senior old salty guy, um, had done some recruiting duties earlier in his career.
Hmm.
And on my air mobile unit, so I was on a team, and the way that the air mobile unit back then, we were in colors. You know, how some, I know they do like letters like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie,
Hmm.
Delta, you know, whatever, Echo. But we did colors. And the color unit that I was on, there was about five of us that had degrees. And
Hmm.
back then, it was required a 4-year degree in order to apply with the DEA. And they were like, have any of you guys ever thought about, you know, coming over to DEA? And of course, the grass is always greener, right? You know?
Yeah.
Um, and so I started looking at it, and the deal is, you know, as a Border Patrol agent, your job series is what they call a 1896. So if you went on to USA Jobs and you wanted to be a Border Patrol agent, you would type in, and of course in the government, whatever job you can think of in the private sector, that job exists in the government. You know, they got nurses, they got
Yeah.
funeral directors, you know, they got guys that work water filtration systems or what, you know what I mean? Like you
Oh
name
yeah.
it, they got it. Well, the Border Patrol job series is 1896. Customs, they had a uniformed section that worked the ports of entry. So as you're coming
Hmm.
in the country and you present yourself, you would meet a dude in a blue uniform. Well, that guy back then, I think the series was 1895. But if you were in a green uniform, it was 1896. Well, to be a criminal investigator with the United States, it's 1811. And I
Okay.
think there's roughly 72 agencies in the United States. And maybe it's 80, maybe it's 69, I don't know, but it's in that range,
Hmm.
70 something, I think, that have 1811s, which is a full blown criminal investigator. So, and some of your listeners may disagree with me, but I would consider an 1811 the top of the food chain when it comes to criminal investigations
Okay.
um, from a federal government standpoint. Um, because they've got 1801s, which are general investigators, and then 1810, which is another job series. And you are an investigator, but you're not a criminal investigator.
Mm.
So if you're an FBI agent, you're an 1811. If you're a DEA agent, you're an 1811. If you work for the Department of Education and you work criminal investigations where people are maybe doing fraudulent things or laundering the money or whatever, and it becomes criminal, they have 1811s that tote guns that work those investigations. The IRS has 1811s.
Yeah.
ATF, FBI, DEA, Marshals, 1811. So I started learning, you know, as you work for the government, you learn more and more and more about the government.
Hmm.
And I was like, yeah, man. In 1811, back at that time, you topped out as a GS-13, which is pretty good pay, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And at that time, as a Border Patrol agent, unless I went into management, I was going to top out as a GS-9.
Oh wow.
So you would get hired as a 5 or 7, and back then you were what they called a journeyman 9. Well, then I want to say 2004, 2005, somewhere in there, maybe. I may be getting my years off a little bit, but there was I guess, Congress or whoever approved it and made Border Patrol agents journeyman 11s. So
Mm.
then you could make your way up to be an 11 as, you know, just a soldier, you know, with you know, six sleeve, I guess would be the best way to explain it.
Right.
And then if you went into management, you then became a GS-12, and then a 13, 14, 15. And of course, it
Hmm.
ends at 15, right? But with the DEA, you get hired and you top out as a 13, which is way more money. So again, the grass is greener. And, you know, you wear jeans and t-shirt every day. well, not every day, but I mean, you get what I'm saying. You aren't
Right.
required to wear a uniform and um, duty belt and all that stuff.
Right.
The job description is much different. You're going to court, you're doing surveillance, you're doing operations,
Yeah.
search warrants, things like that. So it seemed kind of cool. And at that time, our administrator, which was Karen Tandy, um, who is from the Radio Shack family, the Tandy Computers.
Yeah.
She was our administrator, and she had this big push where they were trying to hire people with business backgrounds because she had this vision that in order to take out these international drug trafficking organizations, not just Mexicans, but there's international drug trafficking organizations all over the world. You got to follow the money. That's how you cripple them. You take their money. Because if you take their drugs, they're just going to make more drugs. But you take their money, which it's kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, it's kind of ingenious, right? Because, they create the drugs or grow them, right? If it's coca, it's grown. If it's meth, then it's produced, in a lab. But ultimately, they're doing all that, to turn it into money. And they go through all this trouble to turn it into money, and then you take their money. It's bittersweet. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? I think I'm interested. So I talked to my wife. I said, I'm thinking about maybe applying with the DEA, and we'll see what happens.
So if you're out there, you're struggling, need help, don't forget you can dial 988, press option 1. You can always text 838-255 or go to veteranscrisisline.net, click on the chat icon. Any of those options will put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But remember, one life lost is one too many. I care about you. I know this guy here cares about you. Everybody cares about you, so please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, reach out to the people that are close to you. Ask them how they're doing. If they need that helping hand, please give it to them. All right. One last time, man. Thanks for coming on and doing this. Don't hang up on me when I do this outro video thing.
Yeah,
but
I got one last thing I'd like to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
To your suicide shout out. Look, I've learned and I've had brothers of mine take their lives, and it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Being a TTM or a trauma team member, we've had to respond to some stuff like that, and no problem. Just think, whatever problem you're dealing with, somebody else has dealt with it, man. And you just got to call those numbers, reach out, and there's somebody there that has been through the same pain. And, because you only got one life to live, man. We don't get 9 lives like the Morris the cat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll sign off with that.
Okay. Well, once again, Jimmy, thanks for doing this, man. Much appreciated. To all the listeners out there, you guys stay motivated and change your socks.
No more 22. On to the journey and finish the fight.